Welcome everyone to today's Social System Mapping sumApp Tech Talk for August 24th, 2020. And your hosts today are me, Christine Capra, co-founder of Greater Than the Sum and sumApp, and Tim Hansen, co-founder of sumApp and Greater Than the Sum, my partner. And Kara is also a host, helps with the tech and the chat and links and all that kind of fun stuff. So, looks like we have another person coming in. I'll just proceed. So today is our session today is the third of our monthly 3 sessions where we have a different topic or a different sort of focus for each of the sessions. Our first session of the month is always on the second Sunday. It's always the on-ramp session, which is a really good introductory level session for people who have never seen a social system map and just want to see what this is all about that we're talking about. Or also for people who want to see one another's maps. So people who are mappers often like to see maps that that others in the community have made. So it's a good opportunity for that, and then just to see who else is in the mapping community with us. So that's always on the second Monday, and September 14th is the upcoming one, and that will be Ben Roberts will share his Now What map. Hey Jim.
Hey.
And hey Laura. I think it's Lauren. Sorry. Lauren, you want to can we hear if your voice is working?
Hi, thanks.
Hi, welcome. Jim's getting a beard, it looks like.
Something happening.
Okay, so then the second session that we have every month is on the third Monday, which is a deep dive conversation that is usually a topic that has grown out of the on-ramps or is a topic that is starting to bubble up in the community. People are saying, I'm hearing more questions about it. The next one will be September 21st, and Jim will be co-hosting it with me. I hope you remember that. We're gonna be talking about how to use liberating structures to help with map sense making. And then the third one of the month is today's, which is the Tech Talk. And in that one, we usually talk about some, either a new feature that we're just rolling out in sumApp or some sort of feature of sumApp that I don't feel like most people are aware of and they might want to know about. And so today we're talking about understanding segments and the custom survey filter. And like I said a few minutes ago, it's not a super long in-depth conversation, but it's stuff that you, just some stuff to keep in your mind as you're mapping. So I think we'll have a lot of room for questions and answers. If you have not seen a social system map, if you've not done an on-ramp, or you're not familiar with sumApp, some of this will probably not, it will be a little, you might not feel totally oriented in this conversation, but we'll do our best to make you feel welcome anyway. And, but I recommend that you check out, we have a whole lot of previous sessions and with a lot of different topics and a lot of different maps in them. And so I would recommend that you check those out. And I believe that Kara has put a link to the recording page in our knowledge base in the chat. She's also put some Eventbrite links for registering for the upcoming session. So and last thing to know is that I have office hours between every Thursday between 5 and 5:30 p.m. Central Time. The link for that is in our Slack, and so if you're stuck or you're just need someone to talk with about your mapping project, just jump on the link and we'll do our best to get your questions answered. Okay, and also just check for cancellations in Slack. I cancel every once in a while. So today's agendas, we just did greetings and agenda review. We're going to do a chat introduction in a moment, and we're going to demo the segment filter and some of the logic attached to that. Then we're going to demo the custom question filter, then Q&A, and then we're going to wrap up and close. So often we have an extra informal half hour, but we won't be doing that today. So that's our agenda. And for our chat introductions. Let's just have you go ahead and put in chat. And yeah. So names, pronouns, locations. Even though this is a small group, I'm going to do it this way. Just because when I switch gears in the middle of a session, my head just sort of explodes and then I get all confused and I don't shift gears right now. So Jim, Kara. And I encourage you to open your chat box and just see what other people are, where they're hailing from and who's here with us. And I can't tell. If you're not gonna input it, that's fine. That's great. If you want to just unmute yourself and say your name and your location, that will work as well. If you're not able to text at the moment. Right.
Hi, Frank Wennon. I'm in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Him, he, my, him, he.
His. Great. Thanks. Great. Robin, do you want to just say where you are? You're muted.
I'm
You're muted again. There you go.
I'm in Washington, D.C.
Welcome.
I'm Robin Walker Salas.
Hi, Robin. Welcome. And Lauren, do you want to? You don't have to. Just say no. Just tell me to buzz off. Okay, I'll proceed. Unless you are gonna. I'll just trust you to unmute yourselves if you want to vocalize instead of type. How you heard about this session? A couple of you are not super familiar to me, so I'm just always interested in knowing where people are coming from. Feel free to vocalize it if you would rather not type it.
Frank brought me in.
Thank you, Frank.
Good.
And I think go ahead, Frank.
We emailed the other day, and I've been trying to decipher your technology for quite some time, not as successfully as I'd like to, but I'm here now. And I've got a core group of about 10 people that I'm ready to map out, but to be able to communicate the value of the map to other people, to get them to get it, it's like a community endeavor.
Yes.
And until there's enough people that speak the language, I'm the only one that speaks Christine. No, that's not fair. But Kumu or sumApp or whatever. So I'm thrilled to dig in. I've got a bunch of people that I can bring online pretty quickly. I wish there was like an Android app or something. So should I be on a computer for this normally? For this call, I'm on a phone, but should I be on a computer?
Well, often we do have shared visuals, and so and a bigger screen will help, especially if we're looking at a map. If you're on a phone today, I just think that in terms of visually registering what we're sharing with you, it will be easier with a bigger screen. But sometimes people are on phones, and I think that's more a preference and a ease of, like your eyesight kind of a thing.
I have a tablet, and I don't have my Wi-Fi is really it's not existent right this minute. So
yeah, no, okay, Frank, I'm going to move
for
forward.
the next round. I'll try to.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, that's fine. For the.
Okay, so I just wanted to get a sense of everybody's, just a really quick sense of your experience with sumApp and social system mapping. So Frank, I hear yours is sort of like a high level, but still the technology is a little confusing and hard to help people enter into. Lauren, I would like to hear if you're willing to share just a little, is this totally new to you? Have you been on a map? Are you working in sumApp? Okay. again, I'll just trust that you feel free to jump in if you either typing or verbally, if and when, you want to, or you get whatever technical thing is challenging you, whatever it is. Okay, and then questions you have for this session. And I think what I'm going to do is just if you have specific questions now, go ahead and type them into the chat. Once we get started demonstrating stuff, I will not be looking at questions, but Kara will be looking at questions, and so she'll interrupt me if she thinks it's something that is pertinent to the moment. Otherwise, we'll save them and address them at the end. And so I'm going to just go ahead and jump in to understanding segments. So this is, for those of you who, I'm just going to assume that you've seen this. This is the place where this is the sumApp member view. This is mine. Every member view is unique to a person. So if I go into the survey and I fill out the survey, my information is always here and I can always come back and update it. And my connections are also always here. This tells me that this is my instance of sumApp. And we call this the member tiles or the connections page. And in this page, we can click on it lists all the people who are listed in sumApp as network members. And how we find out who knows who is by asking everybody to go into this page of their own version and pop open the member tile and say how well they know that person. I don't know Greg, so I'm not going to click that. So that was kind of the basic fundamental technology that we built when we built sumApp. And then, but as it turned out, our first client and our ongoing repeated client was the Bush Foundation. And what we used it for with them was this particular project that I'm showing you. And this particular project is, they once a year would do a really big bang up event where they would rent the Guthrie Theater, which is a well-known landmark in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And they would rent the Guthrie Theater for a day, and they would reach out to all the various leadership programs and community groups and invite them to apply to be what are called recruiting partners. So if you're a community group such as Community Creativity or Racing Magpie or Public Functionary, these are all different organizations, and you applied and they selected you, you would then invite some number of members of your community. So the leader people in your community, you would invite to this Bush Connect event that would happen once a year. There would be 1,000 people would be invited, and then there would be another 250 staff, presenters, speakers, facilitators, and it's a big day of speaking and workshops and fun stuff. So, so that was our first real big mapping project. But what that means is if you go through this member tiles, you can scroll down for a very long time because there are 1,250 people on this list. So if I just keep scrolling, I'll just be here for quite a while. And so it became an issue where we realized you can't ask 1,250 people to look at 1,250 people's names and say who they know. It's just too big an ask. It's not going to happen. So we, in working with our contacts at Bush Foundation, they were like, well, can't we make a filter that we can, so that we can have a way of minimizing how many people we're looking at. So we're finding a way of sort of saying, we're gonna minimize the population to the people we think you're most likely to know. So if you at least do those people first, then you can, at your leisure, you can sort of scroll through and see who else might be there, who you might know. So for them, what made sense was to segment by the different community organizations that were inviting people. So emergent, so there were general admission tickets, but the government training services or Green Card Voices or Latino Lead, all these various organizations got a number of people and they invited them. So the assumption was if you were invited by Minnesota Campus Compact, you probably know other people from Minnesota Campus Compact. Or for instance, if you were invited by Latino Lead, you probably know other members of Latino Lead. So this way you could go through the segments and say, oh yeah, I know people from there, or I know people from there, and get it down so that you're only looking at, see in this instance, 24 people, or I might select both. And now I've got Green Card Voices and Latino Lead, and I've only got about 50 people to scroll through. And once I'm done with that, then I might wander into looking at other groups, but I've done probably most of the heavy lifting already. So what that means for segments is every person can only have one segment. This is just the way it was designed in the beginning. So there's one segment per person. So if I'm in 2 different groups, you just got to plain pick one. And what we're trying to do with segments is to make it so that it's easy for you to find the people you're most likely to know. And so we're segmenting by some logical subgroups within the network. So I've seen situations where somebody used the first letter of the people's last names as segments. So everybody whose last name is A is segment A, and B and C, and it's like, that doesn't help, because I'm not more likely to know all the people whose last name starts with C just because my last name is C. But if you were to break it up, if it was a Minneapolis network and you were to break it up by neighborhoods, then I might be more likely to know people in my neighborhood. I should stop here. One thing I want to say is what we're looking at now, both the segments and the custom question filter that I'll get to in a minute, they only impact this view. They're not about how you map things, how you put the data into Kumu. They're just about how you make it easier for your members to find other people they're likely to know on this page. Once you're mapping, you can do whatever you want. You can filter on anything. It's not about mapping. So sometimes people say, but I need to have, on the map, I need to be able to show if Christine is part of 2 groups. And it's like, then put a question in your survey about that, and that will be fine. But it's just about filtering on this page. So I'm going to pause here and see if anybody has any questions about the segment thing. Frank? No. Jim? Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Just, do you have, so I found that it's difficult to come up with exclusive categories for people oftentimes. Do you have some surefire winners that you often use?
Well, so it really depends on the context. And so I'm gonna, and you have another option, which I'll show you in a second, but in some contexts, it's just not possible. So especially when we're talking about a global network that's relatively diffuse and where there's a lot of overlaps, it's not a really useful thing. But nonetheless, let's say you had a network that was 1,000 people spread out globally, you still might be able to say something like, I mean, it's only mildly helpful, but something like, which geographical region do you live in, with a somewhat of an assumption that, which is probably not very supportable, but that I'm more likely to know people who live in the Midwest than I am likely to know people who live on the West Coast, which isn't true. But so part of this has to do with, we're trying to capture reality in these 2-dimensional ways that in life we don't have to think about, but in data capturing we do. And so there's this translation. So, but general, so it depends on the network. Again, let's say it's a network of schools in the Twin Cities, then we could have each school could be a different segment.
Mm-hmm.
Neighborhoods, states are often, geography, whether it's global or regional, states are often one.
Thanks.
Okay. So that's how segments were designed to work. But like Jim, you're just alluding to, sometimes that segment thing just doesn't make any sense. And so sometimes, like let's say in our social system mapping community of practice, I couldn't really think of any segments that made any sense. So I didn't come up with any. But then you have this little segment filter here that doesn't do anything useful and looks stupid. And so what we did was we said, well, okay, at least if you're not going to use segments, let's make it so you can turn that off. So it at least doesn't sit there looking stupid. So you can go into define settings and where'd it go? Say, hide the segment dropdown. So now, if I go back to here and I refresh, that's gone. So one of the things we can do, and with a group of 100, it doesn't take that long to scroll down, and it's not that hard to sort of eyeball it and see who you know and don't know, especially if they all are nice and put their pictures in. So for groups of 100 or less, especially if it's not obvious, I just say, let's just not use a segment. Let's just start where we start, and then as the data comes in, we think about it, and if the map gets big enough that it starts to be cumbersome, then let's think about segments. So the other thing you can do is, if you've got a list and all the email, your member list, you can in a spreadsheet fill in the segments after the fact, and then just load those in, and it will overwrite everybody's it will add segments to them after you've started your map. You can always change the segments using a spreadsheet quickly and easily as well. So sometimes it's not useful, and I say just take it out, and then just be sensitive to maybe as the map grows, it might become useful, and then let's add it. Okay. Now, any other questions about segment? I'm going to move forward then.
I kind of do.
Okay.
I'm not sure if this is, this might be a separate conversation. I'm trying to basically bring 4 people together to map out what I call their centers of influence. The communicators, the experts, the connectors, communicators, experts, and help build out their center of influence, so that each of 4 people have a mapped out center of influence using the mapping process, that we can map out their center of influence. We could call it a tribe, we could call it a network, doesn't matter. But to try to communicate this into something that resembles English is been very difficult. I have a mock questionnaire and a map that I've basically handwritten, but I haven't, and I'm here because you have something that's really close to what I'm envisioning, but the application that I have at this minute is specific. This might be an after hours conversation, but some of it is close.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah, no, and everything that we do is sort of interwoven with every other thing that we do, so it's hard to really have a separate question that isn't related to other things. But what it sounds like you're doing, it does sound like we should have a totally separate conversation about this. But from just what you said, it sounds like the process that you're going to use is not the standard sumApp process. The standard sumApp process is we identify a population, and then we ask them all to say how they all know everybody, which sounds different than asking 4 people to identify their own networks. And it's not clear to me what you're going to do with that.
Needs to be modified. So.
Yeah.
So I guess we can have this offline or after, or set up a time, or one of those.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
We'll do that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So now the thing, Jim, that the questions that you're asking, the sort of what comes from that is, so we did this. Bush was happy the first year. Everybody was, thought it was great, except that, it was still new, and we got only so much maybe half the population answered or put themselves on the map after the first year. But so by the next time we did this, they were more sophisticated about how they wanted to present. They were very mostly interested in this front end and the user experience. And they were like, okay, Christine, but I think people are more likely to know each other based on their interests. And we have this question of like, so let me go to the survey. What issues are you working on? Are you mostly arts and culture and humanities, or civic engagement, or economic development, or human rights, et cetera, et cetera? So they ask you to pick two, and they're like, I think they're more likely to know each other based on their interests. Like people in the Twin Cities or in the Midwest who are working on human rights are more likely to know each other than they are to know people who are working working on the environment. So they're like, we want to filter for that here. And I'm like, okay. So we did that. And let me just show you. And the reason I say was like, okay, is because on the face of it, it seems like the same thing. It seems like just, well, you made a filter on that, now make a filter on this, easy peasy. And in a way it is easy peasy, but what's different about it, and the underlying assumption that's different, is with this segment, the survey administrator, we're deciding what the segments are. We know what segment everybody is in. So for instance, in the case of the schools, we would know before we start who works at or goes to what school, and we load that as an administrative act on the back end. With the survey, and as soon as you've loaded all your list, you've got data there. There's stuff to filter on. With the survey segment, it's a little different. So here's the functionality. This is only in tier 4. So if you're not in tier 4, you can't do this. But in tier 4, you can pick one of your checklist questions, doesn't matter which one. So here's another example. This one, if we were a totally native network, this one would be very useful. We could maybe assume that in a totally native network, that people would be more likely to know each other based on their tribes than on some other piece of information. So we might use this one instead of the issues one. But any one of any of these checkbox question lists can be used. For instance, now, to use your pronouns, that would not make any sense. That would not be a useful filter on the front end for people to find one another. But a native nation might, if that was relevant to everybody. But in this instance, we use the top 2 issues. And there's this checkbox right here. If you're in tier 4, you'll see this little checkbox called custom filter. You just click custom filter and save, and then you save the survey. And then now when I go back, if I refresh, the custom filter will be there. And so now I can see, of all the people in this network who took this survey, I can limit it down to, I just want to look at the people who are working on human rights. And now I can see them. And so now I can go through this list and have a smaller population to pick from. Then I might say, once I've done that, I might say, okay, that wasn't so bad. And actually I do know a lot of artsy people, so let me just check that one out too. So one of the drawbacks of this is that when you first launch a survey and the first 10 people take it, all of these items are going to be 0. I think they just don't even show up unless someone has chosen it. So there will just be, the 2 topics that the first 3 people picked. And so it doesn't actually become a really useful filter until there's a lot of people in there. But then, so it's just a little bit, the fundamental paradigm is a little bit different, but it's another way of filtering. So, and it works with however many, like if I selected 5 issues, I would show up in each of these filters for each of the 5 issues. So it's a more than one. So, so that's that thing. Questions about that? Jim, does that sort of help so in that,
Absolutely.
yeah, so in that one you could put, what methodology networks are you part of, like HSD or liberating structures, or, and then that would increase the likelihood of people being able to find each other. Questions about this?
Just a comment that, I think the thing that you said, if your network is 100 people or less, it's easy enough to slide through even without the filter by segment. It's only when your networks are larger than that it becomes overwhelming. And then you've probably got enough people, if you're in tier 4, that have noted some element, some characteristic that your survey-based filter can work on. So
Yeah. Right. So it's like, I just wanted to sort of tell you the story of how it evolved, because it evolved through big groups and sort of like the problems we were trying to solve. And let me tell you so that was Bush Connect. And then, like I already showed you, for our social system mapping community practice, we just don't use a filter or a segment at all. And we could also have the standard segment drop a filter, never show it, and just use the custom survey filter only. So like with Bush, then once we use the survey-based filter, now people have 2 ways of filtering, and they will cross-reference each other. But I don't know who did what there. But you could just have it so that this is the only one that's showing, and this one just isn't showing if that one's not relevant, but you find you use the survey one. And then I want to show you one instance of another way you could use this, which is, where'd I go? So this is the Reamp network sumApp instance. And how Sarah is using this is, so they've got their segment is based on states, and states are a really relevant component in this network because they have state tables and they have a lot of organizing at the state level. So that works just fine here. But the other way she was thinking that people are most likely to know each other is by what network-wide events people have participated in. So hers is, what have you done? The 2018 annual meeting, the 2018 Equitable Deep Decarbonization Summit, the Systems Thinking Academy, the Modeling Boot Camp, the 2019 annual meeting, the 2019 Energy as a Human Rights Summit. So, so she asks them in her survey, which of these events have they participated in? And so for instance, I've participated in 3 of them. And if I click on here, then I'll just see the people who went to that particular annual meeting, who I might have got to meet. I mean, that would be how I would know anybody in the network. I'm not an actual member of the network, but that's also how each other is likely to know, is if they went to these various, especially the smaller things like the Systems Thinking Academy. Now I know, see, all I've connected, she wasn't actually there and he wasn't actually there, but connected to most of these people. So so that's another way. If, for instance, Jim, like in Ben's map, he could use this one, and maybe you did, as which session of now what were people part of, or even a subset of that. So that's what I can tell you about that. Questions about the segments and the custom filter? Jim, does this seem at all like?
this is exactly what I needed to get clear about it. I was also wondering, with the survey-based filter, you've got a lot of flexibility. Why bother with filter by segment? But I can see that until people have populated enough of whatever your survey-based filter is on, forcing it with filter by segment is at least a way to get people. Actually, it seems like by the time you've got enough people that it's a problem of going through here, you've probably got enough people having filled out the survey-based filter to, I mean, the attribute
Yeah,
that your survey is based on.
yeah.
But the other is that if you don't have tier 4, you've at least got the filter by segment to work with.
Yeah.
The tiers 3, 2, and 1.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a whole piece I forgot to mention. Good thing it just dawned on me. Okay, so let's see. So the other thing that Bush wanted so they're like, okay, so now we've got it so that we can filter by people's interests, or in this instance, by who's attending which events. And Sarah uses this for this reason also. Well, they're like, okay, well, now I want to be able to send an email just to the people who are interested in arts, and invite just the people who are interested in arts to be on the map. So for instance, when Sarah's preparing a new invite, like the Systems Thinking Academy, she has people, once she's got her list of who's coming, then she'll send them this custom filter email, which you won't see unless you've selected that checkbox. So until that checkbox is selected in the survey, this does not exist. But once you've selected the checkbox, then you can send you have a whole new email text to use to invite people. So then Sarah will say, rather than like, Systems Thinking Academy is coming up, she'll say to everybody, go tell us who you know already. And then after it's over, she'll say, go tell us how your relationships have changed. And then we can just do a little time, a time tag to see how much denser the relationships got from the event. So you can use that as well. It only works with, how do I say this? How do I do
Who
this?
does that custom filter email go out to?
Just the people who selected whatever the it's been a really long time since I've done this. Hang on. Hang on. Let's do this. Let's go to this one. And so I'm in our map, and I'm going to go to our survey, and I'm just going to pick one of the dimensions. And I'm going to just say, this is our custom filter. And then define email templates. Oh no, I know this is, so we do this in launch, and then we manage invitations. And then we say custom filter email. So this will send an email just to whomever you select here. So I want only the people who want to be I want only the people who are wanting to teach stuff about social system mapping. I'm selecting that group.
Well, that's great.
And then if I've already created an email with text, I can pull the text in from another one. And then subject, and then I can save it as a draft. And if I save it as a draft, then it will show up. I can't remember where, it's been a long time. Custom filter. Oh, then it will, I'll be able to pull it here. So that way, for instance, when Sarah's doing that thing, she doesn't have to blast everybody. She can just blast a targeted group. So for instance, let's say it was about issues and you were going to do a webinar, like, so you said, okay, I've got these 1,000 people. How do I get them more connected to each other? Well, I'll do, we'll do an in-person event for all the arts type people. Then you could just invite them, use this email to just invite them. And both, you could use it to invite them to the event as well as to fill in their sumApp profile at that point in time.
And one other question about that. You can change what you're doing your custom filter on at any time, right? It might be a little confusing to people that come in to remap themselves and or update their connections. But you
Yes,
can change that filter to
yes,
any field anytime, right?
yes. Yeah,
So you could decide, gosh, I've got 300 people on my map and I just want to send it out to the people who have answered on a particular field, uh, have put data in on a particular field, and you could set up that as a custom filter and then use this as a way to send emails just to them.
yeah. Now, I have to say, I have not actually had the opportunity or the need to use that custom filter in any very complex way. And so it might be that when you do that, we discover that there's a bug in there, that it doesn't
Yeah.
like reject the old, it doesn't know what to do with the previous email text that you had created. So we might find some email functionality bugginess in there, because I've never done that. But yes, you could do that. And then we see what happened. So take care. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Goodbye.